We are professionally nervous, says Tim Hogan. This is hilarious.
Casey, Slotkin, and Baldwin are seeing the same trend line.
All much closer.
And so you do it to sound the alarm bell.
Hitting the panic button. They're freaked out.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
No.
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Nothing. Democrats are hitting the panic button. You can see The Hill is reporting it, and they're not alone. I've also got a story from CNN saying that Democrats grow anxious as election day nears, and that's because, as you can see here from Polymarket, if we look at this 1 week change, not so good for Kamala. And we thought that this diversion in the polls was something that resulted from the release of her 60 Minutes interview and from her new media blitz, where she's now going to be making the rounds, showing America who she is. And we've been waiting for this forever. We're like, great, put her out there. Yeah, finally, let's get to hear from her, because she's not a competent, capable person. And the markets are starting to see it. In fact, even today, you're seeing a little bit more diversion there. Trump going up 53, Kamala down to 46. Now, simultaneously, you'll see a bunch of polls. If you look around on a lot of the mainstream media sources, they'll say she's winning. Kamala's up 3, Kamala's up 4. You see it everywhere. I don't need to pull them up. But if she's up so much and she's winning, then why are they panicking in all of these various sources? The Hill says the following, writing that Democrat nerves are at an all-time high. Like, oh crap, we should have stuck with Joe. 2 months ago, even a month ago, they were feeling bullish about Kamala's prospects. But now, with less than a month to go until election day, they're increasingly worried about a number of issues plaguing Kamala's campaign. In fact, on Tuesday, there was grumbling from some Democrats about 60 Minutes. Oops. There was concern on everything from the static poll numbers to the messaging to even her standing with men. Not just white men, but black men and Hispanic men too. Now, some of this perhaps can just be chalked up to normal Democratic nerves. They tend to be very nervous, hysterical people in general. But it could be either way, it's nerve-wracking. It could be a close race, right? They could be way ahead. It could be close. Either way, it's nerve-wracking. They can't take it. Everything is deadlocked and the composition of the electorate is unknowable. And there are so many things that are unprecedented, said Jamal Simmons. We can't look back with any level of security because we haven't had an African-American woman on the ticket. We haven't had a former president running again. We haven't had a campaign with 2 assassination attempts or 4 criminal prosecutions. We haven't switched out a candidate 2 months before election day before. Yeah. So it's all just hard to know. If you're not nervous, you're not paying attention. Democratic strategist Anthony Cooley, who served with Biden, acknowledged the trepidation. He says, yeah, there's pretty stagnant poll numbers coming out. Democrats were making comparisons previously between Harris and Obama. But now that the sugar high is gone, all of their indulgences, as they were just enjoying themselves, disgusting. We've got to witness it all. This is going to be a fight. These numbers are just so stubborn. People don't like Kamala. Interesting. Now, they say there is some good news, some economic fronts, string of new polls. They show her with the lead. New York Times Siena on Tuesday said Harris is ahead of Trump nationally, 49 to 46. And here, Reuters Ipsos, 46 to 43, favor of Kamala. But it's about the battlegrounds. Oh, yeah. Polling average for the swing state shows that no one has a lead of even a single-digit percentage point in any of the 7 swing states. Democrats are the first to acknowledge that they have walked around in a perpetual state of fear since 2016. Oh boy, is that an understatement of the century. Yes, that's true. It's called TDS. It's called Trump derangement syndrome. It started in 2016. They haven't had a cure since. Their whole lives have been uprooted based on this one man. Since then, they have vowed to keep the former president from returning to office. Says, we are Democrats. We are professionally nervous, says Tim Hogan. This is hilarious. So there is some actual awareness, some self-awareness. That's great. That's the first step in identifying the problem. You have to be I actually do. Yeah. We're professionally nervous, kind of. So that's good. Now, they found solid footing in organizing and messaging. Says there's confidence, but it's measured because the stakes are so high. Now, for the next 4 weeks, it's about channeling that energy. Asked about the state of the race, one major donor dubbed it a flip of the coin. Says, I feel better than I did last week, but it still doesn't feel great. I have a pit in my stomach. The donor attributed the feeling to several things, but mostly pointed to one major flaw. Says the economy, it's not working. The economy is issues number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all right? And she's been criticized for not doing interviews, but now she has. Now she's doing a media blitz, which we're great. I'm happy. So, like, we can't criticize her for not doing interviews anymore. We're really happy she's doing them. So is Trump. In the 60 Minutes interview, one Democratic strategist has praised her comments, but at the same time, her comments fell flat. Well, she's still fine-tuning her message 28 days out. And I'm sorry, but we are in the make the sale phase of the campaign, okay? We're not in the tweaking phase. We all knew this was going to be hard. It's going to come down to the wire, but no one knows how this will end. All right, so that's from The Hill. CNN is also catching the panic. Says Democrats grow anxious as election day fears grow. Most Democrats are increasingly anxious over her fate. There's a growing sense her campaign is stuck in the mud as familiar debates prop up about where to deploy resources. Harris advisors dismiss the polls, saying the race is close, but just weeks shy, and after multiple blitzes and a debate that wiped away memories of Biden, the needle has barely moved, if at all. Brutal. Now that Harris is the first major party nominee in 6 decades not to have won a competitive primary remains a source of lingering doubt. Yeah, people are nervous, quote. They know the polls are tight. Further complicating efforts to rally the base, Democrats are struggling in some quarters to identify who that should be. Some are keen to win over GOP moderates who have soured on Trump. Suburban women are a key demographic. Others are trying to go get Hispanic voters. Worries loom about Arab Americans and younger voters, right? This is how they treat people. It's so gross. Like, you're just trading cards. You fall into these categories. They just bundle everybody up into these little constituencies. Group of Hispanics, group of Arabs, group of suburban women. They bundle them all up under abortion and diversity stuff, right? They talk about these little issues, rally everybody together, and then cobble them together to create a majority, so-called. The nervous energy, and now it's all fracturing apart because everybody in this list can be united in wanting to live in a safe neighborhood, wanting to have a good job, wanting to have sound currency that doesn't evaporate overnight. We can all agree on that, and they have not been able to deliver that for anybody. The nervous energy also stems from the simple fact of the race's slim margins. Harris's camp considers the 7 battleground states to be tied or within the margin of error, which is a problem for them because Trump outperforms those polls. Narrow paths, tight paths. Trump's people feel quite good about this, and it's also something that longtime expert on this stuff, commenter Mark Halperin, is also seeing out there. He posted this over on Two-Way. He says, I just saw some new private polling that's very robust. Private polling says that Kamala is in a lot of trouble. And conversations I'm having with the Trump people and Democrats are extremely bullish on Trump's chances over the last 48 hours. And of course, that matches what we're seeing here on Polymarket. Yeah, obviously. So this is being reflected in the private polls, right? They're all seeing that. In fact, maybe that's why some of these numbers are changing. People who have access to the real data are like, all right, time to swap some money out and make my claim over on the markets. So here is what it sounded like over from Mark Halperin.
We're talking about Harris a lot on this program for a couple reasons. We know what Trump is. We don't need to spend every episode talking about January 6th. We'll talk about it if people want to bring it up. What's happening now with Kamala Harris is this is an experiment. Can you win a short campaign with an untested candidate? And what I'm telling you is happening in private polling is she's got a problem now. Okay? It's not cheering for Trump. It's not predicting Trump will win. She's got a problem. Please bring up the New York Times poll. So new New York Times poll shows her up 3 nationally. We all know that 3 is like the bubble point, right? If she's up 3, she's got a chance to win the Electoral College, but they'd rather be at 4 and they don't want to be at 2. So 3 is right at the bubble.
It's interesting because that's the margin of error, right? So why do they need to be up 4? Just to be outside the margin of error to give them like assurances? Because if this is accurate as it stands, she should win, right? If it's 49 to 46, they're always like so close. It gives them plausible deniability, right?
I'm not saying this Times poll's right. It's in line with other national polls. Now, bring up 102. Wall Street Journal has a story about Democrats really worried about the 3 Rust Belt states. We all know from our contacts in both campaigns that Pennsylvania is tough for her right now. And without Pennsylvania, there are paths, but there aren't many. There's no path without Wisconsin. So you see here, Tammy Baldwin's Senate campaign poll shows Harris down 3 in Wisconsin. We all said yesterday, Wisconsin and Michigan are looking worse for Harris than before. Baldwin has her down 3, not Baldwin has Harris down 3. Why is the Baldwin campaign sharing its polling with Wall Street Journal? Good question. Sean, why would a campaign share their polling negative for their candidate? Because they want more visits? Is that the reason?
I mean, I think part of this is like a Hillary Clinton redux, which is that you want to make sure people understand what's going on. Plus, you're tied to it. Tammy Baldwin can't win if Kamala Harris loses.
She can. Yeah, she can. I think she
okay.
can.
Well, maybe it's not a 5,000 vote squeaker, but I think part of this is to make sure that they understand this. But I will say this. Alyssa Slotkin said the same thing last week in Michigan. Like, this is what we talked about the other day. This is, again, they are sending.
I think that's the challenge for Democrats is the trend lines, right? I mean, if you just go back now for the last 3 to 4 weeks in Michigan and in Wisconsin, not that Harris was up, 7 and it went down to 4, down to 1. It's gone from 3 to 2 to 1 to tied. And at the same time, those Senate candidates, Casey, Slotkin, and Baldwin are seeing the same
all much closer.
So you do it to sound the alarm bell.
Hitting the panic button. They're freaked out. Sound the alarm bell, and they're doing it. They're even adjusting what Kamala is actually doing and saying. And so every time we play 60 Minutes, they copyright ding us on this. So we'll be careful on this clip, and it'll be a little bit jittery so we can make sure we can play it. But this was identified by this fellow called Maze Moore on X, and he identified this. So there were two things that happened. Kamala gave an actual answer, and then they edited it out. And he gives us some background on where this came from. So the original answer from Kamala aired on Sunday. She was talking about Israel, babbling all over herself as per usual. Got crushed in Sunday's release. By last night's broadcast, CBS had replaced the word salad with something that she said earlier. And then that's what they broadcast and uploaded on YouTube. So the original answer they aired, and he found it and watched how they edited it. Just look at the main video. Yep, it was edited, and they broadcasted the edited interview last night as well, right? A lot of people saying, oh my gosh. So let's parse through this, see if we can keep this from getting a strike. But here was Kamala, who was trying to answer about Israel.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
So they cut out about, 5-10 seconds of just bumbling words and then tightened her answer up so that she didn't sound like a moron. So that is what 60 Minutes does, right? Trump did not go on 60 Minutes because of what they did last time when they lied about the Hunter Biden laptop and said that it was Russian disinformation, misinformation, no evidence. And now they're covering up for their floundering, incompetent candidate who can't answer questions about pretty important things. Trump called this out. He said, I've never seen this before, but the producers of 60 Minutes sliced and diced. They cut and pasted. Lion Kamala's answers to questions, which were virtually incoherent, over and over again. Some by as many as 4 times in a single sentence or thought, all in an effort, possibly illegal as part of the, quote, news division, which must be licensed to make her look, quote, more presidential or at least better. It may also be a major campaign finance violation. This is a stain on the reputation of 60 Minutes that is not recoverable. It will always remain with this once storied brand. I have never heard of such a thing being done in, quote, news. It is the very definition of fake news. The public is owed a major and immediate apology. This is an open and shut case and must be investigated starting today. Yeah, is this an in-kind contribution? Did they cut a campaign commercial for her and then publish it? Interesting. I wonder if Tish James will investigate this for fraud and indict somebody there and take away their buildings. Take away CBS's or 60 Minutes, take away their building for defrauding the public and trying to interfere in an election, promising the news and then delivering Kamala propaganda. So she's doing a terrible job. Obviously, they're trying to figure out what to do about it. They have now released apparently a new ad, or at least an internet promo that looks like this from Trump War Room. They call it a new ad, and you're going to see this is really clever from the Trump team.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Right on, Mr. President. That's all you need. 20 seconds right there. All you need. Thank you, Kamala. I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Boom. Nailed it. Just have to use her own words. She's responsible for a lot of our current environment, and now people are figuring it out. So she's making the rounds, trying to come off as a folksy individual. She showed up with Stephen Colbert, and he is very excited to have a beer with her. This might be the first time she's ever drinking anything out of an aluminum can, but here is this very organic interaction between these two lunatic Democrats.
The old saws is they just want somebody they can have a beer with. So would you like to have a beer with me so I can tell people what that's like? Okay.
Yeah, gonna be so good to have a beer together, Kamala and Stephen.
Now, we asked ahead of time because I can't just be giving a drink to the Vice President of the United States without asking. You asked for Miller High Life. I'm just curious.
Okay, the last time I had beer was at a baseball game with Doug.
So cheers. There you go.
Cheers.
There you go.
All right, so here we go. Let's take a big sip of that, Kamala.
Oh.
Yep, get it? Man, that hit hard. Did it, Kamala?
The beautiful city of Milwaukee,
The
Wisconsin.
champagne and beers.
There you go.
Great job. She read it from the label. That's
So
great.
one of the old.
All right, so, okay, there you go. Kamala's slurping the foam off the top of a beer. Just the tip. All right, so I guess now a bunch of people from Wisconsin who love the champagne of beers are all going to be piling over each other to go vote for Kamala. So nice job there. Now, they're not happy with Kamala's performance in a lot of these exchanges. In fact, even CNN and their people were reaming Kamala over this. How can she sit there and say that Joe Biden is amazing and that nothing would change? That's like exactly the opposite of what she should be saying. And CNN is calling her out on it.
Get to what Priscilla was talking about, in that one of the questions that Kamala Harris was asked was about how she differentiates herself. Is there any daylight effectively between what she would do and what the Biden-Harris administration did? Let's watch part of the answer.
We're obviously two different people, and we have a lot of shared life experiences. For example, the way we feel about our family and our parents and so on. But we're also different people, and I will bring those sensibilities to how I
your parents
lead. Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
No.
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Nothing. Border, wars,
Molly,
inflation.
what do you make of that?
I'm surprised, frankly, that she doesn't have more to say about this, given that she and her campaign know that this is one of the main questions that voters have about her. And one of the main things she's been trying to establish as part of her candidacy is the idea that she would represent a break from the past 4 years, and to not be able to come up with something to say in that moment. She continues to not be particularly nimble on her feet in a lot of these interviews, and this is a very obvious question that gave her an opportunity, frankly, to differentiate herself in a way that would have made news, that would have answered, I think, the curiosity of a lot of voters who want to know how she would lead differently, and she's not very specific in laying that out, and
so
she can't
why don't we
point
just
to
have
a
Joe
decision
then?
she would have made differently, which, you know, in an electorate that doesn't like the way this administration has led and that doesn't like the track that the country is on, that may not be a very satisfactory answer.
I mean, it's a delicate dance, because it's not as if she's coming in, it's not as if she just fell out of a coconut tree. She's been part of this administration as the vice president for 4 years now. She did later talk about the fact that she would put a Republican in her cabinet, which she first told me over the summer. And then she said, oh, that's something that's different. She sort of added it later.
Well, okay, so Liz Cheney would come in and be a part of her cabinet. She's the same as Joe. Kamala is Biden. Biden is Kamala. Terrible. And even CNN can't hide it. So they're like, okay, maybe she should have done something about this.